So after weeks of waiting, Daredevil finally showed up in the She-Hulk show, and the question that's being tossed around recently is whether or not the MCU ruined him. Now, as I've said in the past, I had absolutely no expectations for Daredevil's appearance in She-Hulk, and I thought that they were just going to have him cracking jokes about being blind. Well, as it turns out, I was actually kind of right about that.
It's a low blow insulting a blind man's clothes. I'm wearing pants, right?
But blind jokes aside, do I think the show absolutely disgraced Daredevil as a character? No, I really don't think they did. And now, before you She-Hulk stands start cheering and tossing your drinks in the air, and before you non-She-Hulk fans, like myself, start groaning, let me explain really quick. Yes, I did say that I don't think this show absolutely wasted him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think they did him justice either. So, when it comes to Daredevil in the She-Hulk show, I'm sort of in the middle. We first meet Daredevil in this episode in the courtroom when he serves as a defendant's lawyer. Jen's client sues the dude that makes suits for superheroes because of a product defect, but the defendant claims that his suits are foolproof and that he doesn't make mistakes. The dude doesn't have a lawyer at first, but a few seconds later, Matt Murdock makes his grand entrance. As he walks in, he cracks a small joke, but then goes on to absolutely stomp Jen in the courtroom, because he's just a really good lawyer. It turns out Jen's client was just an idiot and didn't follow the suit's instructions, so Murdock and his client easily win the trial. After this, Murdock meets Jen in the bar where he makes the blind joke and they have a short but decently believable conversation. Their meetup is cut short due to a work situation coming up on Murdock's end. So, while I wasn't really a huge fan of the blind joke, I really appreciate that his lawyering skills were shown off right from the get-go, and he easily destroyed Jen in the courtroom and won the trial for his defendant. A little later on in the episode, Jen's client calls her and says that he's being chased, so she runs over there to help him. It turns out that Daredevil is the one chasing him, and She-Hulk, not knowing that Daredevil is Matt Murdock, attempts to stop him. So yeah, they fight, and She-Hulk basically wins with no problem, so she unmasks him. Now, I don't really care that Daredevil lost this fight too easily, because I'm thinking about it this way. He wasn't trying to fight She-Hulk since he was preoccupied trying to chase her client, and realistically, this early on in She-Hulk's career with very little experience, there's no way she wins a clean one-on-one fight with a veteran Daredevil anyway. Daredevil was clearly holding back and didn't want to fight She-Hulk, thus she got the upper hand. So I really have no complaints in that situation regarding Daredevil. It was just a small throwaway fight to reveal Daredevil's identity, so there was no issues there. Following this interaction, Daredevil reveals that She-Hulk's client actually kidnapped Daredevil's client, so they need to work together to rescue him. They reach a warehouse of some sort where Daredevil's client is being held, and this is absolutely where the episode peaked, in my opinion. We get some really cool fight scenes involving Daredevil and some thugs until it's cut short by She-Hulk jumping through the ceiling and ruining this scene. I'm not gonna lie, I was really into this scene involving Daredevil fighting off the thugs, and I was so ready for him to take on another 5 guys at once. Pause. I was so ready for him to wipe the floor with another group of thugs. But as I said, She-Hulk jumped through the ceiling and took out the thugs and ultimately disappointed me. Now listen, I understand that it's obviously She-Hulk's show, so the argument may come up that the spotlight shouldn't all be on Daredevil. However, when you have a guest character appear on the show, in my opinion, you should make that character stand out as much as possible. Anyway, they reach Daredevil's client, take on a few more thugs, although nothing really cool happens, as Daredevil's just in the background making a few more jokes and end up rescuing the dude. After this, Daredevil and Jen have a short conversation on a rooftop in which Jen asks Daredevil how long he'll be in town for. Daredevil says that he's only in town for one more day, but he'll perhaps take Jen out to dinner if and when he ever comes back. Jen, being the freak that she is, suggests that they should skip all of that and take it to the bedroom right that moment. Now, I'm not suggesting anything here, but this is the second dude that Jen brought home after just meeting him, you know what I'm saying? But enough about that. It's time to talk about the part of the episode that sort of got my gears grinding and made me just roll my eyes when I saw this. After Daredevil and Jen finish up their night together, if you know what I mean, Daredevil is seen taking the walk of shame barefoot outside of Jen's house. Shoes in hand and everything, there's a useless little scene of Daredevil just walking after he hits the rear and disappears. It's like everything was going so well, you know? Like Daredevil had some cool fight scenes. The MCU didn't ruin him, in my opinion. And then we get to this scene. And, you know, although I still don't think this scene absolutely tarnishes the character of Daredevil, it's like, what's the point, you know? He's like walk in, shoes in hand, and everything. And it's just. It's like, why are we going to have the character of Daredevil, or any goddamn superhero for that matter, taking the walk of shame? What's the point, you know? It feels awfully tacked on for the sake of showing off that some men have a feminine side or something like that. Now, I'm just spitballing here, but imagine if the character of Black Widow was seen taking the walk of shame after a night with some guy, you know? You're telling me that that wouldn't be seen differently than if Daredevil would be taking the walk of shame, you know? It's like I don't know. It doesn't matter, but that's the scene that just made me roll my eyes and not understand why they would put that in there. But that aside, that does do it for Daredevil's appearance in the She-Hulk show. So, was the 8-week wait for Daredevil to show up worth it? Absolutely not. He doesn't do anything important that makes me want to tell people to go watch the show, or even the single episode for that matter. I just don't think that they necessarily wasted him apart from the garbage walk of shame scene. We did see him destroy Jen in the courtroom, and we saw some pretty cool fight scenes, but we also saw an equal amount of questionable shit in there too, so it's whatever. I mean, he's not wasted, but it also isn't ideally what I would like to see from the character of Daredevil, if you know what I mean. But while we're at it, I might as well talk about that dumbass ending to the episode. The main villains were revealed, and they're a bunch of dudes in masks and voice changers who want to expose She-Hulk. They hack the screen and say that She-Hulk doesn't deserve her attention or whatever, and call her a slut and all of that fun stuff. So what does She-Hulk do? Miss really good at controlling her anger over here, damn near destroys half the building and almost kills a man before she's stopped by what looks like his damage control. She loses her temper and turns into a full on Hulk before seemingly coming back to her senses, and then the episode just ends. So it turns out that the main threat of the show is just a bunch of internet warriors, keyboard warriors, yada yada yada, who don't like She-Hulk. Basically representing what's supposed to be the toxic fandom of the show. Yeah, I mean, I saw this coming a mile away, as I've said before. It is what it is. But there is your lovely episode 8, aka the Daredevil episode, as we draw near to the finale of this wretched show. But hey, I've had some positive things to say about this episode, and it definitely is the best episode of the show, but that's not really saying anything considering the poor quality of every single other episode. But in all seriousness though, I do think that this was the best episode of the show, and Daredevil did carry it. But go ahead and drop a like on this video if you enjoyed my perspective and agreed with what I had to say. Go ahead and hit the all-powerful dislike button if you disagreed and think the show is the second coming of Christ. And subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. So that is about all I have to say. Later.